Welcome to Creatively Exposed, a podcast and safe space for Black and marginalized creatives to empower, educate, and uplift you through the final product of self and creation. Bring a homie, share with a homie, and enjoy the show. Welcome back to Creatively Exposed, and I'm thinking of doing these bi-monthly, bi-weekly, probably bi-weekly, just because I have projects until April. So, yeah. A couple of things have happened since then. First things first, let's discuss Black Women Speak, hosted by Imani, created by Experience J, who is also the creator of Black Audio Dramas Exist and is doing the damn thing out here. It's so bomb to see like an idea come into existence, especially I think in this virtual space where we're all able to attend. It becomes more accessible. And just to see like all these Black folks there, it's so exciting to be in rooms where we don't have to explain ourselves of who we are and why we are and all of the little macro aggression nuances that have to happen when in predominantly white and non-Black spaces, right? And so it was a great flowing discussion where I learned so many different things. And it's also like this collective understanding of how Black women have to take up space, create our own spaces, and also pivot when we have to pivot. And there's something amazing about not giving up, not allowing no to be enough, and to have a community and have it a community in process, right? Which is basically what Black women in audio is. It's where we're finding our like-minded folks that are driven and are creating these spaces. And I'm so excited to see like what will come from this. I've been connecting and seeing, we've started following each other and all of these things, and it feels like the beginning of something big. And I'm excited that I'm just here for the ride. Like I'm literally watching this as it grows and it becomes what it needs to be, and it's just so exciting. The questions were great. I think they are very important questions to be had. I don't know, it really just felt like a whole bunch of friends and colleagues got together and we decided to just speak on our experiences or even our lack of experiences and how we've moved forward. Because I think a lot about the Black community and as creatives and being independent of big name things is that there's more creative control, but with that also comes like the issue of gatekeeping and access and thinking, oh, there's someone else kind of doing this. And I think the biggest takeaway is that scarcity is the lie that capitalism and gatekeeping and all of these institutions that weren't built for us in mind like to portray. And there's enough space for all of us to create and take up and build our own side of the table, if you will. And there's no need to consistently, I believe Jazz said this is like being under the table and getting just the scraps. And so this is us having a table and bringing chairs and bringing, it's like it was a potluck of ideas. Uh, and I just can't wait. I can't wait to see it again, do it again, be in the viewer's chair, because I think there's other things that can be soaked up when you're part of the audience. And so I'm gonna look for all of the links to see if it can be viewed, and definitely will put it in the show notes. The other thing that I have been thinking about, I've been teasing it for a while, and I want to go into the throat chakra series. And it's interesting because I feel like there is maybe I'll say a collective synchronization, right? Where right now, energetically, it feels like a time of boundaries, a time of rest, which I'm not getting, a time of speaking up and speaking your truth, or saying no, right? And not being ashamed of that. And so it's interesting to be in a very uncomfortable space of having to deal with all of these things. Mercury retrograde is a little tough on me. And in this case, it's been, yes. So make sure that we're not overextending ourselves in different ways, right? And a lot of this is me to me. And who we give our energy to, especially if it is extracting instead of replenishing, in knowing that our energy is currency. As creatives, literally pouring into something that isn't pouring back depletes our ability to keep creating and to keep wanting to create. And so I do want to shout out, speaking of creating, my therapist. She's at Get Artspired. I'm definitely putting that in the show notes. Is building a visual art library through a sketchbook that she has created for the healing of Black, Indigenous people and people of color. And so it feels like everything is tying in, right? It's we're becoming the creators of our stories. And so what do you want in your story? What do you want to put in that story that someone else could refer to, or that, future you can come back to and be like, wow, I've made it this far, or whatever. Like, what power do you want to take back and narrate for yourself? I think this has been the power of this weekend, is that most of the time we when I say we, it's Black women, it's marginalized communities, especially Black ones in all of the walks of life. We've had to suppress ourselves to fit in these boxes. And I think a lot of us are realizing, me included, that we don't belong in these boxes. there's no one right way to do life. Like, if we did, we'd have an actual manual. I mean, there's biblical texts and stuff like that, but like here right now, like where is our 2021 version of this, right? Of like, how do you do life properly? And so we do life properly, especially in this like overly amplified energy of Aquarius. A whole bunch of planets are in Aquarius right now, and you do it to the beat of your own drum. You listen to the voice that sometimes you've had to swallow and ignore because it didn't quite fit to the mold that you think you belonged in. And so I think another part of the throat chakra is also listening to the voice that you haven't allowed to speak to you, to the truth that you've kind of put up in a shelf and let it get dusty, but you still keep hearing it ring and ring and ring in your body, in interactions and things that you're like, there's more. There's so much more to this. And so, dear creatives, create your space. Take up your space. And if there's nothing that looks like it, it's because you're supposed to make it. There's ways of doing so, of course, without, doing the most, like me right now. But if it's fulfilling, if it feeds you, if it ignites you, if it brings you joy, even if it brings you pain, and at the end it brings you joy, right? Listen to that. I was doing therapy, and a big takeaway that I feel like ties into all of this is like, our body literally tells us what's right and what's wrong. If we are not 100% overjoyed when something comes to us as an opportunity, we listen to it. If something feels wrong, instead of feeling shame or like, oh, I shouldn't, she said, it's realizing that that is not a space for you to be in. So let's do some life discernment, right? Not just people, not just projects, but like life in general. I'm definitely reviewing, just like how Mercury retrograde wants. Things come up and cycles return, but it's literally because we're supposed to break them, right? And so sit with yourself, review and see, okay, am I doing these things out of like autopilot? Or are these the things that make me sing? It's not as intangible anymore. It's not as intangible to really create a pocket where the work that you do is fulfilling until it becomes, first a seed with the root, then a whole ass tree. I fully believe that. And so I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you again for being patient. I did have 2 events back to back where I was bending my crystals and things and my spiritual wellness things. And so I wasn't able to do last week's show. I'm definitely thinking about doing bi-weekly. That way I'm not, having to not show up, because as I reconnected in Black Women Speak is really why Creatively Exposed exists, and it really is out of a need to no longer suppress all of the things that I am, right? to give a voice to things that I